Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another episode on the Inspire Health podcast, also playing on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Thank you to all of our listeners out through there streaming through UK Health Radio. This is part 2 of our episode on water with Ralph Suddath. And if you haven't listened to part 1, make sure to go back and listen to that episode first. We are going to just stream right into part 2 where we finished off. This episode is a larger one. When we play episodes on UK Health Radio, we're only able to have a slot for about 52 minutes. So sometimes we will be breaking episodes up into 2 parts so that you can get all of the information rather than us trying to trim down one episode and you don't get to actually experience all of the cool information that we are talking about. So check out this one with Ralph Suddath. I think this is just amazing. The work that Ralph has done with water is mind-bending. I think he probably knows more in the worlds of energy, frequency, and vibration than most of the other people I have spoken to. And he is done it. He has actually created things. He's an inventor. So he actually takes this information, he studies, and then he puts it into practicality and makes stuff with it. And he has made some absolutely amazing, amazing technology. I will be sharing more of that with you as his site finishes up and share a lot of the other amazing stuff that he has created, all very Tesla inspired and these quantum physicists and Schoberger and some of these other guys that have done some amazing work that he's piggybacked off of that research to create these amazing technology for water, and not just for water, but also a number of other types of tech that I think is going to be incredibly beneficial in the future here for everyone's health. So I hope you guys are enjoying this series so far. We are having an amazing time with all of the different guests that we are talking to, and we're going to talk about some really cool topics: health, education, governance, a lot of really neat stuff. So make sure to stay tuned for all these episodes. Hit the notifications and subscribe to this channel. That is the best way to get the information as it comes out. If these episodes are feeling like they're important for you and you're learning something from it, please share it with others. That's the best way for us to be able to bypass all of the algorithms that are often restricting a lot of this information to actually getting out. So thank you so much for your support and enjoy part 2 with Ralph Suddath. We'll talk to you soon.
And I started learning, and I learned from a number of scientists about what really goes down, what goes on behind aging, what's really behind aging. What is aging really? Aging is cell division. And then you go, okay, well, if aging is cell division and there's so many cell divisions and we die, okay, well, what happens before the cell divides? Where do we go there? What's going on there right before the cell divides? Well, the cell divides when the DNA strand begins to unwind. Okay, the DNA strand in the cell begins to unwind. That signals the cell to divide. Okay, and when the cells divide, okay, well, that just tick, that's just your aging begins, right? That's aging. Tick, tick, and you only have so many cell divisions and you're out, right? So I go, okay, wait a minute. So what causes the DNA to start to unwind? Let's go there. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. But let's just say, okay, well, how do we keep the DNA strand from unwinding? Well, cool research went on around that. You're right. There's a lot of cool DNA scientists that were working on that. Guess what keeps the DNA strand from unwinding? Cool, what they call biofrequencies. Biofrequencies keep the DNA. When we played certain sound, like 528 was famous, 432 was famous. There's only a few frequencies that I got to see the research on, but these DNA strands begin to tighten up with these sound frequencies. Well, guess what that does? Slows down the aging process. Duh, right? And so I went, well, why don't we talk about that? That's cool. That's really cool that the DNA strand is tightening back up with these. But then I also saw that my discovery, I found in nature these patterns, these spiral antennas that I saw in nature, and I also saw it in the DNA. And I saw that these attracted energy and resonated a field, the 0-point field. And I saw that energy and light also tightened up the DNA. So there was a correlation. Then again, clues, not facts. clues. Okay. When I'm talking to you right now, there's no facts. I'm only telling you clues because I'm an investigator. I'm an explorer. So I'm still putting all my clues together. So as I'm telling you this, understand these are all clues to my investigation. But when I saw that, okay, so sound tightened up the DNA, also light tightened up the DNA, right? So I was like, okay, so the storage of light. Okay, so then I went into light storage. Well, that's important. We need to know about light storage. And so this is where I end up going past what my grandfather knew, because he was a famous anatomy physiologist, and so he knew, he was the top in his field. I mean, and so he was right about the genetics, but what he didn't factor in was as we age, we lose light, just like the plants. When the plant's light cycle begins, okay, we're going back to the light cycle. When the plant grows, right, when it starts to grow, okay, it reaches maturity, but then the biological clock, you go from the spring to the summer to the fall. When we reach the fall, the plant knows that the sun is not coming out as much; it's diminishing. And so it immediately seeds and flowers and seeds, and then or dies, right? Or the trees drop their leaves and all the energy goes into the root system, okay? Because nature has signaled to the plant kingdom that the light is diminished. So that signaling is very similar to the humans, right? We're just walking plants. We're just biological plants, right? In human form. And by the way, and I say this very seriously, because if you look at a plant cell, an animal cell, and a human cell, there's not a lot of difference. You have to be a trained biologist to know the difference. They're very similar, okay? They're different, but they're similar, okay? They're cells. And so what we learned is that light storage was an important piece, because, again, nature showed us, okay, the less and less light, so it's time to die. So we're signaling our bodies to die because of our light storage is diminishing as we get older. Now you guys say, well, what causes light storage to diminish? Environmental toxins right off the bat. Totally. The preservatives and the antibiotics and the chlorinated water. Number one contributing cause of disease, in my opinion, this is again a clue, is chlorine. Why? Why do you say that? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Doctors have told me that. I said, oh, yeah? Okay, well, then you don't know anything about the microbiome being the most important feature in the human body, right? Because the microbiome is what does it all. And if you're drinking chlorinated water or even filtered water that was chlorinated previously, it still has the memory, and the microbes don't flourish in that water. They can't. If anything, they're suppressed, right? So chlorination is one of our biggest now, even though it was one of our greatest things, in the turn of the century. We didn't know any better. But after 100 years, what happens is the microbes have adapted to the chlorine now. And the EPA scientists, the reason why I was hanging out with them is because they were seeing my water system was the future. And the reason why it was the future is because it was the only thing that would eliminate superbugs. The superbugs that we're creating were created, these superbugs, meaning the bugs that are surviving chlorine. They're created because they were forced to adapt to chlorine. And how they adapted was they created this mucus pump, and the microbe coats itself in mucus so it can survive the chlorine. And they're called superbugs. The EPA said this was the greatest threat against humanity. So I thought, well, I need to be working on this then. This is important. If the EPA told Congress that this is the greatest threat to humanity, then I think we should be paying attention. But you know what Congress said? Shut up, gag ordered them, fired and or retired everybody at the panel. This is how stupid not stupid because they thought they were smart. Again, everything that I think is stupid, they think is smart. So I don't know what world I'm living in. Okay? And so this is true, by the way. Again, it's the world according to me. It's hard to fact check something that happened 30 years ago, but it was a known thing. I mean, the superbugs came from the chlorination of water because they were forced to live in an environment that they belong. Low frequency, low vibration. Okay, well now you chlorinate it. I said, well, yeah, but this is where this. Look, I'm just here to do a job, man. What are you doing? They're poisoning us. Okay, well then they adapted, like all things. We all adapt, right?
Ralph, can I interrupt you here for a moment? Because I think that's really important with regards to even how you're describing as water having memory. And if water has already been chlorinated and we filter it, because a lot of us, the vast majority of the population that has filtration systems like we did, we feel that, once you filter the water and have it go through a purification system, then that water is good and safe to drink, and it's healthy. But you're saying you've gone a level much deeper and are talking about memory. Can you speak a little bit more about that to people who
Yeah.
consider
Very
that?
glad you brought that up, because this is what all the health people think. Oh, I got the best water filter on the planet. I'll go, okay, well, what are you doing to put the energy back in the water? Because you know what carbon does to water? Carbon is energy seeking. It strips the electrons right out of the water. Water's, carbon's pulling all the energy, whatever left energy is left in the water, carbon's picking it up, right? And so when you filter all that water, your water is completely dead. And then they go, well, if you got minerals in it, okay, well, it's not completely dead, but it's still in the dead category, right? For one, it's not moving water. And two, you just filtered the heck out of it and stripped all the, what they call vital force, right? They call this vital force. Carbon strips the vital force from water. Okay. So what I saw was critically, I was like, oh my God, that's why I had to build, even though I didn't put a lot of energy into it. I sold tens of thousands of Hydriva units just because, hey guys, you need to revitalize your water, because dead water is a problem. Nobody's talking about it. And I could show people, look how quickly disease grows in this water. And then I energize the water. Look how quickly, look how long it takes. And disease would never grow in my water, ever. Like, why? A year went by, still no disease. And we ran tests, and I was like, because it's structured, and I figured out a way to program the water where it continually attracts energy, right? I put antennas in the water, and so it can continuously attract an ether. So anyway, I came up with cool stuff, but I was like, oh my God, this is so important that the one thing they should have a class, like they got mathematics, they got, reading, you got, algebra. They should have a class on water. Water is the most important substance in the universe. And then when you get to water, it's like, all right, well, everybody knows water is H2O. All right, now what else can we talk about? That's it. That's as far as we've gotten, and that's as far as I learned. And everybody else I talk to, nobody knows. Experts in medicine, experts in physics, nobody knows about water. I mean, I spent 25 years and millions of dollars in research, so I have a little bit of an advantage, talking about water than most. But still, something as important as water, I feel like we should be putting more emphasis on, and it's, at least our university should be doing more research, right? And I had some cool scientists, and I can't remember. I used to know. You got to forgive me. I lost all my memory on all the cool scientists that I worked with in the universities, who wanted to explore what I had discovered. Right. Penn State was one. There were several cool groups of people in the scientific community that wanted to explore what I was finding. Right.
How did you get them to get interested in your work? Because typically, if there's no profit to be made, then there's no studies to be had.
At least for big pharma, but for the universities, sometimes you might be able to just out of interest. But yeah, how did that?
Well, honestly, there was no funding. These were just pure scientists, people that were like, hey, what did you mean you came up with a water system that doesn't use chemicals? I go, yeah. Okay, well, we'd like to test that for you. I'm like, well, thank you. I'm so appreciative, because most of you guys don't take me serious, and I realize that I don't have any letters by my name, and I'm not in your club, your educational club, or whatever the club is where you have letters. And so I was so glad that there was, slowly people were, coming to me. They were coming to me. I was writing papers on my research. I mean, I wrote all the papers. I wrote, there's a lot of papers that you can look up on that I wrote in the early days around vibration, energy, and water, and my inventions that were doing things that nobody had ever thought possible, right? And so they were supporting me, and then I just got so, there was a period like in all life, you get into a depressed state when people aren't looking at what you're doing seriously, and and I kind of lost faith in humanity, and I moved to South America, and I began just doing research with indigenous. But I also, when I was, in my spare time, I was showing the world food producers how to grow food without chemicals, using sea solids, unwashed salt, right, from the sea, unwashed, whether you have 92 plus trace minerals, and humates, which are just basically plant matter, decayed plant matter, and microbes, which I can, grow easily, very cheap. I mean, it's just cow manure that we grew out, and my energized water, and no disease could live, because plants are attacked by bugs because the frequency is low. Plants and bugs have a relationship. They're friends. Plants put out a suicide call when they're nutrient deficient, and the bugs attack the plants when they're nutrient deficient. And so that created a whole new industry, the ag chemical industry, just like the pharmaceutical model. They didn't even have to think about it. They just took the pharmaceutical model and applied it to the agricultural community, right? It's great. It was easy. And so they kept the plants. They did this thing called the NPK method, which is like a 5 mineral solution. They knew what they were doing. And what that did was it made the plants grow really fast, but they were nutrient deficient, which meant the bugs were attacking them. What did that mean? Oh, we have to come up with all the pesticides and all the herbicides and all the, so they created all this industry. So now the food producers were forced into this trap, whether it be the gene altered corn and all these other things that they were doing, and saying, okay, well, we took about that, right? I don't want to go into, but basically, then by the way, one of the biggest, there's a lot of problems. The world's got a lot of problems, but you know what the number one problem is? And this is my investigation, my opinion, is our food quality. Number one problem. Why? Because we're like plants too. We're just human. We're just in the form of a human being, but we rely on the soil just like the plants do. We rely on the nutrients coming from our foods, because that supports all of our chemical processes in our body, our hormones, all of our endocrine, all of our systems require these trace minerals and nutrients to function as a proper human being. Remember, I think we talked about, subhumans, humans, and superhumans. And it's like they're keeping everybody at this subhuman level because they're on the verge of being sick, right? We're always right there next to sickness. We're too close to the low frequency, low vibration, low voltage, right? So that just keeps us in a vulnerable. Let's call it vulnerable, right? And so what, we're forced to seek out remedies for our symptoms, which are caused by nutritional deficiencies most often, right? And so I saw the biggest problem was the fact that we gotten away from the truth, and that the Monsantos and the ag chemical people figured out a way to keep the plants healthy but sick, and which forced our need for that industry. And so I went in and said, all right, guys, I'm going to show you guys a new method. We are dealt with the world food producers, the Doles, and all the majors. That's the one thing that's I think happened when I hit my head. I lost all my ability to be fearful. I didn't have enough sense to be fearful. So I went into these meetings like, I'm just not going to be afraid, because everybody was afraid, to make change, right? Everybody's afraid. And it turns out I had a reason to be afraid, because I was upsetting the cart. I showed them how to take these sea solids, which they said I would destroy the field with the salt. I said, no, I'm not. I even put 5 times more than they recommended, just to prove my point. Because what they weren't incorporating, or in their experiments, was energized water. I knew that my energized water would accelerate the microbes. And what the microbes did is they eat the salt. They love sea solids. They eat the salt. And so after a year, there was 85% of the salt was gone from the soil. And we're 5 years into one experiment, 4 years into one experiment, and there's no disease, no bugs. they still have a weed problem, which I couldn't get them to stop using the glyphosate, because that's what they use to kill the weeds. So, but other than that, I could show them how to grow organically without the need for chemicals and or fertilizers. Because plants, you don't need to tell a plant how to grow. We're so stupid. We think we're going to be smarter than nature. All nature wants is exactly what it always had. It had the right balance of trace minerals. Guess what? We're the same. And so now we're growing humans, and we've been growing humans for about 30, 40 years now, that are super deficient. They don't have those incredibly important. And you think about 90 plus trace minerals, and every single one of those trace minerals has a job inside our body. They trigger. I mean, there's lithium, there's chromium, the list is too long to mention, but every one of them has a job. And so that's why I know we have a relationship with the seed, because every single one of those nutrients has a special purpose inside of us. And so that's why when we went from human to subhuman, because we lowered our nutritional properties in our body, right? Our trace mineral. So I don't know what kind of humans you think we're growing now, but I'm a little concerned. I'm just going to leave it at that without stepping on any toes. But so my point is like, but if you knew this as a scientist, it's like, wouldn't you want to make the best humans if you were growing a human garden? It's like, I want all the nutrients in the soil, because I want to grow the best humans that we can be. I want to grow all superhumans, because we're all magical creatures. We're magical. And we're not getting to realize that as subhumans, right? And I mean, if we just get them out of subhuman into human, it would be great. And I think a lot of people that's what they're striving to do. But getting into superhuman, that requires a whole nother level of knowledge. And when you get into that Christ and Buddha consciousness, right? And so, but guess what? It's attainable. It's totally obtainable, because all they were basically telling you, and they didn't keep it secret. It was about the light. It was about light storage and how do we increase their voltage, because we have superhuman powers. We have psychic power. We have all these powers that they say, that's I don't know. We can explain, a lot of that stuff away. Meanwhile, we do have powers. We have magical powers, and we can obtain them if we understood the biology of the human body and its ability to store and retain light, right? Because then you're an energy vessel. We're pure energy, right? If in physics, we're pure energy. And so but we need to understand, that there's rules to being a superhuman. One, they tried again. There's lots of clues. One of them was when they said, God rested on the seventh day, and that was the day when everybody was supposed to stop, not eat. Well, that's because the number one, okay, here's where disease begins. They said disease begins in the colon. It does not begin in the colon. Disease begins in the stomach. We wear our stomachs out. The hydrochloric acid pH of a baby is around a little over 0 when we're born, around a little over 0. Okay, as we age, as a baby, then it goes into 1.2, and then as we age, it settles when we get into our teenage years, and around there it gets up to around 2, and maybe a little above 2, but then it starts climbing. Okay, well, guess what's happening? We're reducing our hydrochloric acid, and so the body's not able to break down this food, and so it becomes putrefied. And then it gets stored in our tissue, and everything starts to break down when our stomach loses its ability to produce hydrochloric acid, right? And it's a hydrochloric acid pump. Lots of studies have been done on this, and so the real health challenge that most people face is a weak stomach. That's a big challenge. And by the way, I developed products for it. I just stopped making them because I was living in South America, and I couldn't I stopped manufacturing the product. But it was basically a carbonic acid, right? That I lowered the surface tension to around 2.8, 2.6, and I energized it, and so it would heal the stomach, because a lot of people have, and you could tell if you have a weak stomach by just sticking out your tongue. If you got cracks, doesn't have a smooth surface, well, that means you have cracks in your stomach. If you have cracks in your tongue, you have cracks in your stomach. Your tongue is your stomach. And so most people, you'll see people that have health challenges all have cracks in their tongue, which means they have cracks in their stomach, which means it's irritated. It's what they call leaky gut, but it's more than just that. It's really, it's a big upset for the body. And so it's a major challenge to overcome. But I saw the biggest challenge I saw, and I don't know how much time I got. I don't know how long I've been going on. But the biggest challenge I saw, the overall, because I had to go back. I always have to take, because you can go down. There's so many rabbit holes. How many rabbit holes have people gone down in the world of health, right? You can just travel down. So I said, all right, I've been down so many rabbit holes. I'm sick of rabbit holes.
Health Canada
So
actually put out advertisement in newspapers and on TV warning people not to
go down
rabbit holes.
Oh, okay. Well, then all right, I'll back up. Well, I'll tell you what, this is the simple truth. Rabbit holes are important because that's research. That's when you go down rabbit holes, you come back with information, and you have a lot of clues, and you can put those clues together, and you can form educated opinions. So they're important. But what I really saw is I always have to come back to say, I got to get back to where everything's third grade, or to me, it doesn't make sense if I can't explain it to third graders, right? Because, a lot of people need to be told at a third grade level. It resonates if it's on a third grade level as well. So I just said, okay, well, listen, what turns out to be the real issue is human beings are these electrical beings, and we're voltage driven. And it turns out one thing that disease has in common, the one thing that goes with disease in the human body is low voltage. You can't have disease unless you have low voltage. Cancer, low voltage, they go together. Parkinson's, all the neurologicals, low voltage. It's always present. You can't have disease without having low voltage. And so I turned my attention to, well, how does the body increase its voltage? Well, it turns out hydration, big piece. Turns out hydration and voltage is important. And you think about that, if you put, you got to put water in the battery, the battery dies, right? Right? You're not water. So that was a big thing. I said, okay, so my water's helping the voltage. That's important. But then I also saw that, the cells run, how the cell produces energy for the mitochondria? Light. It extracts light from our foods. And that light goes into the mitochondria. There was a cool scientist from Czechoslovakia that was taking photographs of the mitochondria. They don't allow this. They wouldn't allow. I tried to get that microscope brought over, and it was banned. Even tried to get my grandfather to let that microscope come to the United States, and they banned, and they had it banned. I think it was it was banned to 2024. Back in 2006, 2005, like 4, maybe. I can't remember how long ago. It was a long time ago. And my grandfather was the first time he admitted that there was a conspiracy there, because he contacted his friends at the Institute of Health, or I can't remember the agency. The big government agency. His friends were working there, and they said, "Oh yeah, all I know is that you can't bring that." The reason why they couldn't bring in the microscope is because the science that we use this science where we call signatures. Where they leave markers, like these disease markers, right? Like HIVs, it leaves a marker. Nobody's ever seen the HIV virus. We just know they have markers. So they're keeping us, okay, you can study the markers, but we're not going to let you see the actual virus or the microbe that studies or that carries the virus, right? They're not going to show, they're not showing that movie. They're just saying, oh, that marker, okay, so that marker means that virus. So they kept us in this, away from, that's where Rife technologies, because he figured out a way. Because what happens is when light goes through the microscope to see the object, light kills that light that you're using to observe the organism, kills the organism, right? Because it's light and it just kills them. So Rife came up with a way to angle that light and to where it didn't kill them, so that we could actually see the actual microbe, right? And he did that. It was magical how he did that. And then he could play a frequency, and he could see under the microscope it blow up the microbe. So that's where that was his contribution to medicine, is that he saw, this frequency at a certain oscillatory frequency that you could shatter these microbes. it had a role, but you know what I came back to is, wait a minute, but you're still dealing with the environment. Hello, if you got bad bugs, they're there because of the environment. So I didn't put a lot of um, time. I mean, I spent several years on studying Rife technologies and being involved in the research, but I still felt like the environment was king. And so the microbes were really not our enemy. I mean, that's the bottom line for me. It's like, these aren't our enemies, but yeah, but they set up house. So in order to move them out, you got to do both. You got to change the environment, but you also got to move out these guys out of the environment, out of the neighborhood. Right. So I saw where it played a role, and it had a role. It still does. Right. But again, they suppress that. They don't always like, no, this is what really upsets me. It's like humanity is so smart. We're such incredible creatures, but yet we have not pursued energy medicine. No research into energy medicine by any universities. All the research is into pharmaceutical medicines, things that can be sold and resold, right? No one-time purchases. Any type of product that's a one-time purchase, they're not interested. And so they kept this incredible knowledge from us because it wasn't profitable. And it's like, get over it. We can bitch about it, but I bitched about it for so long. I don't even have a bitch about it anymore. Because it does no good. And it's like, it's old news. It's like, really? You're going to talk about that? That's so 80s, it's so known. It's like, move on, get a life, move on. What are you going to do about it? So I'm just, wait a minute. What am I bitching? These people don't control my mind. I can think on my own and seek out the truth on my own, and I did, and I discovered that low voltage was the biggest thing that we had to figure out. If we could figure out how to increase the voltage of humanity, then we can avoid most of these problems they're coming, and they're not decreasing, they're increasing. Right, they're increasing because the environmental pollution is increasing. The pharmaceutical industry is just pumping more and more drugs into our environment. I could care less what people take, but what they don't understand is what they take goes right back into the environment. It doesn't just magically disappear. There's no leprechaun that makes this stuff disappear, man. They go right back into our environment, and we end up getting them in some homeopathic way or whatever. It's the signature, the memory of those chemicals and those pharmaceuticals are in our water. They're in our, and then they're in our foods, because we keep passing these laws, letting these drug companies pump these toxins into our meats and our poultry and our fish and anything that they can sell, right? All that mRNA vaccine. I mean, they had this the warehouse, this 100,000 square foot warehouse of vaccines that we don't need anymore. Well, they figured out how to sell it to our food industry. And so now they're pumping up the cows now with it. So we're not going to run from it. It's like in the world that we live in. Get over it. So the only defense that we have is to figure out a way to keep our voltage up. And I've developed, again, it forced me to invent, the quantum energy wellness bed, the Tesla star, which is Lakovsky and Tesla and Rife, and then combined with all my technology built into it. It's a super machine. And then I got the hydrosauna that uses hydroxy vapor so that we can breathe in this vapor to heal our tissue and our lungs and our heart, in form of energized water vapor. And then I came up with a Cogniva brain machine so that we can keep our brain health at its highest, because brain inflammation is going to be a big problem in the future. And so I came up with my whole system, which I'm going to call a spa wellness technology, because I don't want to be in the medical field, because that's where you get attacked. I just want to be in the wellness industry to keep people's voltage up. I'm not trying to cure anything. I don't want to cure anything. That'll get you disappeared. It's against the law to cure disease. When did they come? You think about, when have they cured anything in the past 50 years? What have they cured? They're not curing anything. They got a treatment for it, though. They got a treatment for it. I haven't heard the word cure anything in 50 years. Okay. And so that's, that's an interesting fact, and it is what it is. But again, we're self-healing creatures. So we have to We have to understand that about us, and the fact that we can be superhuman if we choose that life. And we can, there's rules to that life. You gotta give your body a chance to recover, which is why it was written in ancient text that you rest on the seventh day. Give your stomach a day off. Let your stomach repair. But what do? We wear our stomachs out 7 days a week, 3 meals a day. And that doesn't include all the snacks and desserts. So we're just wearing out our stomachs. And so that's the important part of fasting. It's not so much just to allow the body to catch up and detoxify itself through the tissue, but it lets the stomach repair and restore itself, because that's really where a lot of our health issues are going to have come from and are going to come from in the future.
Ralph, I did a lot of work with Dr. Jerry Tennant, and that's one of the main areas that we'll look at as the underlying root to a lot of the problems is in the stomach, because it just extrapolates out to everything. And it's also that stomach meridian is also tied with worry and pensiveness and everything too, which also tends to shut down that whole system as well. So it's kind of intertwined with, that system, the stomach. It's tied with the emotions around worry, constant worry and pensiveness, and even the teeth that it relates to are prone to getting then more infections. And then we get these other sort of problems that sort of sit there, and all these things that just keep sapping the voltage in people and keep their energy levels down and susceptible to disease.
Well, that's an area that, I just couldn't, I have a way to improve that situation. And we'll talk about that off air, because I can show you how to help people improve their stomachs, right? And I've helped thousands, in my 30-year plus career, because I had issues. By the time I reached 40, I was popping Tums, and I was like, man, this sucks. This is my life now. I got to eat Tums every time I go for a taco. And so I figured out that my stomach was wore out. I wore my stomach out. Hello. And so I figured out how to fix my stomach, and I fixed a lot of people's stomachs since then. And there is a way. So we'll talk about that off air, but and hopefully we can help some of your patients. But again, it's just this knowledge that we just haven't been exposed to. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming to be anything other than an explorer. I've earned the right to call myself an explorer. I truly have. And I have patents in physics. I have patents in water. I have patents. So I've done due diligence, and so I know what I know. But again, these are I call them clues. I have a lot of clues that I've collected over my career, and I'm excited to share.
Well, we're super excited about all of this too. And I feel like we could go on for hours and hours. And I think maybe what we'll probably figure out off air here, we'll kind of figure some of this out. But I think it'd be really wonderful to even break down some of your different inventions and talk about each one kind of specifically, so that people can really get an idea of how they work and how they can be a benefit for people. Until we do that, where is the best place for people to be able to read more about your work, learn about what you offer, the different products that are available, that sort of stuff? I know your website has been...
And we're going to time the release of this episode to when your website is ready and people can check it out. So...
Okay. Yeah, my Hydriva website is up. It's been up for years. It just shares, I was trying to promote all the ways that we could use water, and I developed customized systems for people. But now my focus, I'm doing projects for the government now, cleaning up, rivers and lakes, and so I've finally gotten the attention of, some of the big players, and so my focus is more on that, and I haven't really put a lot of attention on promoting myself anymore, because I got plenty of work. And I don't need the advertisement, but now that I am coming out with my the reason why I decided to come out with my medical equipment is when COVID happened, I saw the narrative change to where, listen, the pharmaceutical industry is here to save you. And I went, what? What? What'd you just say? The pharmaceutical industry is here to save us? Okay, well, I'm sitting on the mountains in the Andes and realize, okay, it's time. I finally said, I'm ready to, um, I'm ready to step up because, if not now, when? And I saw if they're really, I mean, the most insane thing I ever heard. And then the fact that about 50% of the world bought into it. Mm-hmm. And that's when I went, okay, so that's 50%. Oh my God. If they got 50% on their first try, that's a bad sign. So that's when I just went crazy and just invented all my stuff. That's when I invented the quantum energy wellness bed that's proven to raise your voltage. Scientifically proven to reduce inflammation, and my brain machine to help people with traumatic brain injuries and dementia and Alzheimer's, and all my equipment, my hydrosauna to make a super sauna with hydroxy vapor. All my things that I created were to give the humans an alternative to this so-called plan that the pharmaceutical industry is here to save us. And that they are the only ones that are allowed to provide solutions, which they made it clear. Right. And I was just in awe and shock at how people bought into it. Not everybody, but there was enough for me to be concerned about the sanity of humanity. So anyway,
yeah, Ralph.
I'm glad I'm back to America, and I'm sharing, my explorations with the world, or with my people.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put the links to the website on the show notes so people can go check that out too and go learn more about the work you're doing. This won't be the last time that you're going to hear from Ralph, because we are going to keep picking his brain as much as we can to just share this information out as wide away as I think we can, because I really do feel like right now, as much as there's so much restriction going on and trying to force, in many ways, I think, a very specific direction on how we are going to be able to care for ourselves. At the same time, it's stimulating these other options to come up to the surface. And ultimately, I think it's going to be for people to decide,
And it's why Ralph came out of the Amazon.
Yeah.
It's caused him to come out and actually take what was in his head and just bring it and share it with the world. So I think it's really, this time that we're living in is definitely a catalyst for all the amazing inventions and different ways of thinking to come on board.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea of this series. So it's the idea of creating a new Earth. What do we want to see? And so many times it's the contrast that helps us paint the picture of what we really want to have and create in this world. And not just for us, but for our kids and for our grandkids. What do we want to put in place? So
I have a quick question for Ralph. Ralph, with regards to the Hydriva units, because we have one that we recently installed at our main water system at our home as well. So you're saying that if that's already installed, there's no reason to actually further filter the water, right? Like we also put it through.
It goes through a Berkey as well after, but are we better off to not put it through a Berkey and just take it through the tap water?
No, here's why. Okay, because I talked about how these filtration systems are stripping the vital force from water. So what I do anyway, my patents are in physics, okay, in the physics of water, which, these were very unusual patents. It took me several years, but I had to prove my theories, right? I mean, I was MIT, Harvard, a whole bunch of scientific groups worked with me to validate my theories and my claims. And so what I was able to do was program information into the water, the geometry. So so I basically take super water, and when you filter it, it's still super water. Okay. And so that's the difference, because I'm infusing my information into the water. It's not in the surface of the water. And so it's infused. And so just like an atom that's vibrating from the inside, it's just vibrating out. And so the energy is permanent. Is there a percentage of loss? Yes, of course. It's picking up a percentage, but that's it. It's not stripping what little vital force is in the water generally. That's why this is super water, not natural water. It's supernatural water. So it still comes out supernatural on the other side. It just has a percentage drop because of filtration. So filtration has a role. Berkeys are great filters. It makes it taste cleaner, and they're important. Minerals are critical, but the thing about minerals is sea solids. You got to do this. There's a reason why, and nobody talks about this, and I don't want to get off on it because should be another show. But those 92 plus trace minerals that glom onto the salt crystal. Again, I've studied this under the microscope. It's magical. You got this salt crystal, right? And 90 plus minerals, trace minerals, are glomming onto this magical crystal, right? It's magical. The whole thing's all magical. Nobody can explain it still. And it's like, why does every single mineral in the sea all magically glom on to every single salt crystal in the sea, right? There's no salt crystal by itself. They all have 92 trace minerals glommed on to the salt crystal. And so it turns out there's an orchestra there. And so when some people, I got this great salt from this mine, and so there's like 13 minerals. Great, 13 magical minerals. But when you have 92, you have the orchestra. It's the magical orchestra. Because I used that salt in the mines because I was up in the mountains and I didn't have access to the sea. So I said, well, let me try it. Well, it didn't act the same into the soil. It wasn't the same. Yeah, 13 minerals, but it wasn't the same. I couldn't use it in agriculture. I had to get the sea solids because that orchestra is critical. So I will say one thing. If you took a pinch of sea solids, which by the way, you don't sell it, they don't sell in the health food stores. You have to get it from the ag stores because they give them to our animals, not to humans. They're smart enough to keep those valuable trace minerals that make humans healthy away from humans. But you can get them. There's like C90, SEA90. They're expensive. But on the world market, it's $5 for a 50-pound bag.
Wow.
So economically, that's the solution, which I would, and hope that I live long enough to do, where I bring over container loads, and then we put the nutrients back in the soil that we stripped away over the century of farming, right? But if you could also put, to where it doesn't taste like anything, but all of those are frequencies. Every single one of those minerals, remember geometry, right? Each one of those minerals is a specific geometry. They're carbon atoms in a specific geometrical shape. What's magical about minerals is they all have a certain color frequency. They all have their own identified color. No two colors alike. They're all a spectrum of this beautiful color arrangement, all 92. The only one that's different than all of them is gold. Gold produces a rainbow of colors. It's the only mineral that does that. There are other minerals that produce 2 and maybe 3 colors, but most minerals are just a single color. Okay, so those color frequencies you can put in your water. It increases the conductivity of the water, but don't put it in there to where it tastes like salt. You can just put, it takes so, remember, water's a subtle thing. So you can just put just where you don't taste it. And that's how much salt you put in your water, right? And that's just a better, healthier, more electrical water. It's super cheap too, right? And again, if you had good super water, the rest of the rest of your food choices can be a little more flexible. But you need good water because we're 70% water, and we need to figure out how to maintain a good quality source of water to maintain that 70%, because the water's changing itself out. Water becomes dormant, just like water in nature, right? And so you want to keep that fresh, energized water coming in to replace the old, dormant, stagnant water. And it's the one thing you can do to really keep your health, up and your voltage up.
Thank you, Ralph. I know we didn't prepare any questions that we sent you in advance of this recording, but I did want to finish off these episodes by asking the guests what they feel. So what do you personally feel would be important for us to
practically do, like actually for people to start to implement into their life
on a daily basis
to help us actually move towards creating that new vision for a world that doesn't allow us to have more freedoms, to be able to enjoy a different state of health in our bodies, all of these types of things, whatever it is that we are wanting to create.
To raise our vibration in the same way that you were describing the water, in that as soon as the the vibration is of a higher nature than disease, and anything that goes against that just cannot exist within that environment. So I guess in an effort for us to embody that, what is it that you would recommend for us to implement on a practical basis?
Well, that probably is another show, but I'll give you an example, because it's all about voltage, right? And it turns out, guess what? Meditation increases voltage. Positive, happy feelings increase voltage. Why? Because it's the same. Goes back to Emoto's work with water. This is what, again, I learned this from water. Is all of those geometry, right? Geometry traps light, thus creates vibration. It's, sadness breaks down geometry. Negative thoughts break down geometry, right? It's the destroyer, right? So if you stay out of the destroyer mental, the angry, negative mental, so again, positive thinking, meditation, a healthy foods, I can go down, there's a whole list of things you can do to keep your voltage up, right? Keep your voltage up. And every now and then your voltage is going to drop. It's human nature, but you got to know it's dropped, and you got to know you got to shift. You just got to you got to have that mechanism to where, okay, I went down, or my mom died. I'm going down. I'm going down for, I don't know how long, but I'll see you I'll see you on the other side. So whatever the reason that brought you down, but you got to know to come back, and you got to turn it around, because we're like computers too, right? We can program. We can, and again, that's the one thing that computers for me has taught me, even though I don't deal with computers when I'm in South America unless to check my emails. But I learned that we are these electrical beings, right? And we're programmable. And that's what, that's what TV and all that, that's what they're trying to program us, right? So we can program ourselves. You can program yourself to be something incredible. You can, and so, but you can also program yourself to remind yourself that, hey, these negative thoughts are lowering my voltage. It's putting me in a subhuman state. I need to raise that frequency and raise that vibration, and I need to get out of this subhuman state, which it's dangerous to stay too long. It's okay to visit, but you don't want to live there. And so, that's a little bit of advice, but it's a bigger subject than I think we can discuss, in the short time we have. So, but yeah, there's a lot of ways to keep your voltage up, and it's just that awareness. What do you mean we're voltage driven? Okay, well, now you're still okay. This is first grade stuff, but okay, let's start in first grade. Yes, we're voltage driven, and there's a science behind it. These are not the world according to my crazy self. It's actual science. And it's just something they just decided not to teach in medical school, because there's no profit in understanding that this human body is a self-healing mechanism driven by voltage. We're these magical creatures, electrically driven, right? We don't want to talk about that side of us, right? The scientists have before me, the Robert Beckers, Dr. Tennant, a lot of great scientists, that have dedicated their lives to proving and studying this fact, right? And so more and more, this fact is going to get talked about. More and more, we're going to discover that we are these electric beings, magical creatures, self-healing, and that we can increase those abilities. Instead of suppressing them, we can increase them.
I love it. That's actually the perfect place to finish this off with. Ralph, thank you so much. That was brilliant, and I think incredibly inspirational for people to hear. And we will talk to you again very soon.
Okay, I enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
Hold on there.